we have a great impact of Vedic culture which can be seen in the Harivansha. Now, this Katha in the Harivansha, which was a Purana, was characterized by all the 5 Puranic hallmarks of Sarga, Pratisarga, Vansha, Manvantara, and Vanshanucharita. This makes the Harivansha the earliest of the Purana. So, in common parlance, many people refer to the Harivansha as the Harivansha Purana. The purpose of this text was to delineate the lineage, the family of the Vrishnis, and to describe the deeds of Vasudeva Krishna. So Vasudeva Krishna was born in the lineage of the Vrishnis, and he, in fact, in the Gita also he says that among the Vrishnis, I am Vasudeva. Based on Hopkins' work on the Mahabharata, the date of the Harivansha was fixed at somewhere in the 4th century CE, so corresponding to the Gupta period, what in historical terms is known as the Gupta period. Namo Namaha, Namaste to all. I am Sneha Nagarkar and I am going to speak on an introduction to the Harivansha, the Khila Parva of the Mahabharata. I would like to start with a very important shloka which is there at the beginning of the Harivansha. Narayanam namaskritya naran chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim chaiva tato jaya mudirayet. Before getting into the details of the text, I would just like to briefly introduce the historical factors which were present when the text came into being. So, we have the development of the Itihasa Purana tradition, which has its roots in Vedika literature, and the Mahabharata is regarded as an Itihasa. And this term Itihasa has been used in the Mahabharata quite frequently. Now, from the 6th century BCE onwards, we have the rise of Buddhism and Jainism, which also received royal patronage all over India, especially in central India, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, peninsular India. We have the establishment of numerous Buddhist and Jaina monasteries. And by the 1st century BCE, what is of significance to the present discussion is that by the 1st century BCE, the Bhagavata Dharma had become an almost pan-Indian religious tradition, and its centers were located at cities like Mathura, then we have Ghosundi in Rajasthan, Besnagar, and Naneghat near Pune in Maharashtra. Naneghat, there is an inscription of Queen Naganika, the well-known Satavahana queen or Mahishi, and she has invoked Sankarshana, that is Balarama, and Vasudeva, that is Krishna, before the commencement of her inscription. Also, by the 2nd century BCE or a little later, we have the coming of many foreign social groups into India. Of course, we already had the Greek attacks, but some of the Greek attacks did not penetrate right into the heart of Bharat. And these foreign groups were mainly the Shakas and the Yavanas, and they were assimilated into the Indic society. Some of them even became well-known rulers who were giving support and patronage to Indic religious traditions like the Bhagavata Dharma or Shaivism and even Buddhism. Now, in the Deccan at that time, especially in Maharashtra, we have the rule of the Satavahanas and local dynasties like the Kuras. In southern India, we had the regime of dynasties like the Cholas, Pandyas, and Keralaputras, and these have been mentioned by Emperor Ashoka in his inscriptions. And in North India, after the decline of the Mauryas, we had the Shungas and later the Kushanas coming to power, and all these dynasties, starting right from the Mauryas, have contributed immensely to the growth of Indic culture. Then, on the economic front, we witness a very remarkable expansion of agriculture more land was brought under cultivation, and this is very clearly indicated in the Kautilya Arthashastra. Another important hallmark that we find is the culmination, the high point of the second urbanization, which had commenced around the 6th century BCE. Also, the trade, both domestic and foreign, was flourishing, and India at that time had a very prosperous trade with Rome, and the balance of this trade was in favor of India. And this prosperity which India experienced because of the Indo-Roman trade found its expression in many fields, in almost all the fields, all the walks of life, and especially in the fields of art and to some extent culture and of course archaeology. Also, there was a very significant rise in the population, and we also witness an advancement in the material culture. Iron technology came to be adopted in various parts of India. It became very widespread by this period. Then on the philosophical front, we have many philosophical developments taking place in Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. Gradually we have the rise of various sampradayas, and even in Buddhism we have the rise of various nikayas which had their own unique philosophical traditions. We also have the emergence of various texts, both religious and non-religious. We also have the origin of classical Sanskrit literature in this period. Also, we find very rich inscriptional and numismatic data from this period. So the number of inscriptions has grown in a very great manner, and we also find a proliferation of coins. So the money economy was extremely strong, and there was a growing importance of the money economy. Also, as I have already said, there was an assimilation of the foreign communities within the fold of the Indic society. Now we come to our subject matter, that is the Harivansha. Now the Harivansha is the Khila Parva or the appendix to the Mahabharata. And technically, literally, the term Harivansha means the lineage of Hari. Harehe Vanshaha. And Hari here is Vishnu or Krishna. Now the Harivansha is divided into three Parvas: the Harivansha Parva, the Vishnu Parva and the Bhavishya Parva. The narrative about Lord Krishna comes in the Vishnu Parva. Now Harivansha focuses on the clan of the Vrishnis and the life story of Lord Krishna. And what I have, the edition which I have followed for this particular lecture is the critical edition, the critical text of the Harivansha, published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, Pune. And this edition has 118 adhyayas and 6073 shlokas. And the highest number of adhyayas is in the Vishnu Parva, numbering up to 68. Now the Harivansha is basically available in two principal versions, the Vulgate and the critical edition. The critical edition has been edited by Dr. P.L. Vaidya and published by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in 1969. And the Mahabharata itself describes Harivansha as a Purana and a Khila. So some people regard the Harivansha to be the first Purana ever written, and the Harivansha has both elements. It has elements of the Itihasa and Purana. Now the narrative of the Harivansha is supposed to have been recited by Ugrashrava Sauti to the sages led by Shaunaka in the Naimisharanya. The whole text unfolds as a dialogue between sage Vaishampayana, who was one of the pupils of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa, and King Janamejaya, the son of Parikshit and the great grandson of Arjuna. Now coming to the nomenclature of the Harivansha, in various colophons, it has been called by a few different names. So the most common name is Khila, that is appendix to the Mahabharata. Then it is also known as Ashcharya, because there is a discussion in the Harivansha as to which is the supreme Ashcharya, which is the highest wonder present in the universe. And the answer is that the highest Ashcharya, the greatest wonder, is none other than Lord Vishnu Krishna. Then it is also known as Parijata. This could be due to the inclusion of the Parijata Harana episode in the text. Then another very interesting name for the Harivansha is Mathura. So this may be because the Harivansha contains a description of Mathura, and the Harivanshakaras have very fondly described the city of Mathura and its neighborhood. And there is also a possibility that the Harivansha may have been composed somewhere in the Mathura region. This is a probability. Now, coming to some of the important printed versions of the Harivansha, we first have the Calcutta edition, which was edited by the Panditas of the Asiatic Society of Bengal and published by the same society in 1839. Then we have the Bombay edition comprising 3 volumes, which was published by the Khemraj Sri Krishna Das at the Sri Venkateshwara Steam Press in 1897 with a Hindi translation by Pandita Jwala Prasad Mishra. Then we also have the Pune edition in 1 volume with the Bharata Bhavadeepa commentary of Neelakantha Chaturdhara, edited by Pandita Ramachandra Shastri Kinzavadekar, which was published by the Chitrashala Press, Pune in 1936. The Grantha edition in the Grantha script, printed at the Lakshmi Hayanana printing press by Vangipura Vedanta Sri Ramanujacharya in 1897, is also a very important printed edition of the text. Then we also have a printed edition of the Harivansha published by Narasingha Mukhopadhyay in Calcutta in 1871, and one of the most popular and widely read editions of the Harivansha is the one published by Geeta Press, Gorakhpur, with a Hindi translation. Now, coming to the critical edition of the Harivansha, this edition has been edited by a very well-known scholar of Sanskrit and Prakrit, the late Dr. P.L. Vaidya. And P.L. Vaidya has edited numerous other works which are extremely important, and this edition was published in 1969 by the Bhandarkar Institute, Pune. So this is a photograph of the Bhandarkar Institute, and this is how the front page, the cover page of the Harivansha edition looks. So the critical edition is in 2 volumes. First is the critical text. Volume 1 is the critical text, and the second volume has all the passages which were not included in the main text. Now we'll briefly see how this critical edition came into being. The creation of a critical edition is a scientific procedure. It is not a random procedure. And P.L. Vaidya has given the details of how the constituted text came into being, and also B.S. Suktankar, who was the first editor of the critical edition of the Mahabharata, in his introduction to the Adi Parva of the Mahabharata, he has given very, very systematically the whole procedure as to how the critical edition of the Adi Parva was made, how it came into being, and what were the principles involved. And that was applicable to the rest of the Parvas as well as to the Harivansha. So while preparing the critical text of the Harivansha, Dr. Vaidya consulted as many as 36 manuscripts in scripts like Sharada, Nevari, Maithili, Bengali, Devanagari, Telugu, Grantha and Malayalam. Now, Odia and Assamese manuscripts were not available to the editor, so he did not consult them. And P.L. Vaidya has also collated a manuscript in the Nandi Nagari script, but the matter was identical to a Telugu manuscript and hence not used by him. Now, like the Mahabharata, the Harivansha has also two recensions. So the northern recension of the Harivansha in the critical apparatus was represented by the following categories of manuscripts. So first we have the northwestern group, which was represented by one Sharada and four Devanagari manuscripts. Then we have the northeastern group, which was represented by three Nevari, three Maithili and three Bengali manuscripts. Then we have the central Devanagari group. So here two Devanagari manuscripts with the commentary of Nilakantha, two Devanagari manuscripts with the commentary of Suradasa, and six Devanagari manuscripts which just had the text were consulted. Then in the southern recension, we first have the Telugu version. So a total of 4 Telugu manuscripts were consulted, and one was as late as 1839. Then the Grantha version was represented by 5 Grantha manuscripts, and the Malayalam version had 4 Malayalam manuscripts. Now the manuscripts were categorized as per their antiquity and script into recensions and versions. This script-wise division of the manuscripts enabled the editor to identify various versions. And as we have seen, the recensions were broadly divided into northern, central and southern recensions. Now, what P.L. Vaidya did is that if you see the Harivansha, it had an all India provenance, and the critical text must include those verses, in fact only those verses pertaining to which all the recensions and all the versions of the text are in agreement. I would repeat that the Harivansha had an all India presence. Now, the constituted text was thus the one wherein the northwestern, northeastern and southern versions agreed. Now, the critical text of the Harivansha is the one which is in agreement with the oldest available manuscript of the northwestern version, then the oldest version of the northeastern version, and the manuscript representing the extreme south version. Now, the sections which did not concur with these three versions were integrated into the critical apparatus as star passages or placed in Appendix 1 of the second volume of the Harivansha. Another very important thing which deserves consideration is that P.L. Vaidya relied greatly on Kshemendra's Bharata Manjari, and P.L. Vaidya has attached a lot of importance to this text, which is an epitome of the whole Mahabharata as well as the Harivansha. And Kshemendra's date is around 1046 CE. Now, Vaidya considered it to be very important while preparing the constituted text of the Mahabharata, as it would indicate the state of the text in the 11th century CE and thus help to identify the interpolations. And the text which was used by Kshemendra was also characterized. It also had a number of interpolations, and the Bharata Manjari has 1522 shlokas in the section of the Harivansha. And the text of the Harivansha in the Bharata Manjari is the text which was extant in 1046 CE. Now, the critical edition comprises, as we have already discussed, 6073 shlokas, which are divided across 118 adhyayas, and the Vulgate constitutes 18,000 shlokas and 318 adhyayas. So, the Vulgate is almost 3 times the size of the critical edition. Now, let us review the relationship between the Mahabharata and the Harivansha. So, this particular relationship is defined, articulated at the very commencement of the text of the Harivansha. Sauti tells Shaunaka and the other sages who had gathered in the Naimisharanya that he will narrate to them the lineage of the Vrishnis, which was inquired about by Janamejaya to Vaishampayana, the intelligent disciple of Vyasa. Now, after having carefully heard the itihasa, the word itihasa is used, after having carefully heard the itihasa of the Bharatas, Janamejaya, who was very wise, spoke to Vaishampayana. He said that the Mahabharata Akhyana, which was narrated by Vaishampayana to him in great detail, was heard by him. In this narration, he heard about the bulls among men and the Maharathas, great by name and exploits, known as the Vrishni Andhakas. Now, their deeds together were told by Vaishampayana, who was the best among the Dvijas. However, Janamejaya was not content with what the old accounts narrated to him. And in fact, Janamejaya considered the Pandavas and the Vrishnis to be one group. So, Vaishampayana, the Tapodhana, had been fortunate to witness the lineage of the Vrishnis, and it was for this reason that Janamejaya asked him to recount to him the details of this lineage. And the Katha which Vaishampayana narrated to Janamejaya about the Vrishnis has been referred to as Shruti Samhita, that is in conformity to the Shruti, that is the Vedas, and we have a lot of references to people teaching the Vedas, people reciting the Vedas, many references to Vaidika sacrifices or Vaidika yajnas being performed in the Harivansha. So it was in conformity to the Vedas, and we have a great impact of Vedic culture which can be seen in the Harivansha. Now, this Katha in the Harivansha, which was a Purana, was characterized by all the 5 Puranic hallmarks of Sarga, Pratisarga, Vansha, Manvantara and Vanshanucharita. This makes the Harivansha the earliest of the Purana. So, in common parlance, many people refer to the Harivansha as the Harivansha Purana. Now, what was the purpose of this text? So, the purpose of this text was to delineate the lineage, the family of the Vrishnis, and to describe the deeds of Vasudeva Krishna. So, Vasudeva Krishna was born in the lineage of the Vrishnis, and he, in fact, in the Gita also he says that among the Vrishnis, I am Vasudeva. Now, the authentic part of the Harivansha, as a killer to the main Mahabharata, must have contained only those sections with the lineage of the Vrishnis and the accomplishments of Krishna. And the oldest manuscripts consulted by P.L. Vaidya indicate a text of this nature, and according to P.L. Vaidya, the original Harivansha must have been even smaller in volume in comparison to the critical edition. Now, the Mahabharata has been commented upon by a number of people, and so is the Harivansha. Now, the most important commentary on the Mahabharata as well as the Harivansha, by most common we mean the most widely used, we may say, commentary is the one by Nilakantha Chaturdhara. So, Nilakantha lived sometime during the 17th century CE, and this particular commentary is the most accessible commentary on these two texts, and it is known as the Bharata Bhavadeepa. Now, according to P.L. Vaidya, the text which was referred to by Nilakantha to write this commentary is the Vulgate version, which includes the Kailasa Yatra Parva, which is generally a part of the southern version of the Harivansha. Now, he himself says, he in the sense, Nilakantha Chaturdhara states that he sought references to manuscripts from various parts of India, but he largely used the Devanagari and Bengali manuscript. Then the second commentary on the Harivansha has been composed by Arjuna Mishra, and Arjuna Mishra was a native of Bengal and he lived sometime prior to 1534 CE. Now, he has obviously given more credence to the Bengali versions of the Harivansha, and his commentary too is based on the Vulgate. Now, towards the conclusion of his commentary, he has noted the names of his predecessors who had written commentaries before him. So, he mentions people like Devabodha, Vimalabodha, Shanteya, Madhava, and Narayana Sarvajna. He also acknowledges his father and gurus. Now, coming to Vimalabodha's commentary, it was a commentary written on both the Mahabharata and the Harivansha. It is named as Vishama Shloki. Now, he has chosen to comment only on selective shlokas from both the texts, and these shlokas have been designated as Kuta shlokas. His text stands for what is known as the Eastern tradition, which represents the Bengali, Maithili, and Newari versions, and more specifically the Bengali one. Then coming to Suradasa's commentary, this is not the same as the saint Suradasa, who lived in Vraja and was a great devotee of Bhagavan Krishna. Now, this Suradasa, this particular Suradasa, has also written a commentary on the Harivansha as well as the Mahabharata, and in the view of P.L. Vaidya, according to Vaidya, this commentator has imitated, he has emulated, as well as followed closely the version of Neelakantha Chaturdhara. Now, 2 manuscripts of this commentary in Devanagari were available to Vaidya, which were duly used by him. Then we also have a commentary on the Harivansha written by Sri Vadiraja Tirtha. And Sri Vadiraja was a very, very eminent saint philosopher in the Madhava Sampradaya. So he was a philosopher belonging to the Madhava Sampradaya, and this Madhava Sampradaya was established in the 13th century by Sri Madhvacharya, and Shivadi Raja has written a commentary termed Lakshalankara on the Mahabharata and the Harivansha. Now, he has also commented on the Vulgate version, and there is also an evidence for he writing a detailed commentary on the Paushkara Parva of the Harivansha, that's particular section of the Harivansha. Now we come to a very important, a very significant discussion on the date of the Harivansha. Now, one thing that I would like to clarify before we get into this discussion is that by date of the Harivansha, we mean the date of the composition of the Harivansha and not the date of the occurrence of these events. I repeat, the date of the Harivansha refers to the date of the composition of the Harivansha and not to the date when these events occurred. Now, prior to the critical edition, the Vulgate was regarded as the standard. And based on Hopkins' work on the Mahabharata, the date of the Harivansha was fixed at somewhere in the 4th century CE. So, corresponding to the Gupta period, what in historical terms is known as the Gupta period. Now, Hopkins has suggested 4 stages for the growth of the Mahabharata, and the Harivansha was added to the Mahabharata as per him somewhere between 200 CE and 400 CE. Now, according to Hopkins, by the 4th century CE, the Mahabharata was regarded as a poem of 1 lakh verses, and this should include the Harivansha as well. Then Farquhar has stated that the Harivansha cannot be dated after 400 CE. R.G. Bhandarkar, who was a well-known Sanskritist and Indologist, has dated the Harivansha to the Gupta period based on the reference to coins as dinarika in the Vulgate edition. Now, this particular reference to dinarika is found in the 2nd volume of the critical edition, and the Gupta coins, as indicated by epigraphical evidences, were known as Dinara. And these epigraphical evidences are dated to the 5th century CE. So R.G. Bhandarkar on this basis dated the Harivansha to the 3rd or the 4th centuries CE. Now, in what context has this been mentioned? So the text speaks of how Krishna, after his coronation by the southern rulers, returned to Mathura, where King Ugrasena and the residents of Mathura showered him with great wealth, and it was declared that there will be parts of 10 dinaras for all the residents of Mathura. Now, Shiva Prasad Bhattacharya has compared the works of Kavi Kulaguru Kalidasa with Harivansha, and Kalidasa's Meghadutam, the Khanda Kavya Meghadutam, refers to Vishnu in the garb of a gopa wearing a crown of peacock feathers. Gopa Veshasya Vishnu, that's what he says. And such expressions are found in the Harivansha as well. The Harivansha has referred to Krishna as Vishnu, who is in the attire of a cowherd or a gopa. Now, the period of Kalidasa was approximately between 375 to 450 CE. This is just approximate, and scholars postulate that Kalidasa lived during the reign of Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, and Mahamahopadhyay B.V. Mirashi has proved that Kalidasa lived during the reign of Chandragupta II Vikramaditya, because there are a lot of debates about the date of Kalidasa, ranging from the 2nd century BCE right till the Gupta period. In fact, earlier it was believed that Kalidasa lived in the court of Bhoja Paramara, but then with the discovery of the Meghuti inscription of Ravi Kirti, which is a Prashasti of Pulakeshin II, the Chalukya ruler Pulakeshin II, it was firmly established that Kalidasa lived definitely before 634 CE, because he is mentioned in this inscription, and 634 CE is the date of the inscription. Now, it can be assumed that by the Gupta period, the Harivansha had become a very famous work, and poets like Kalidasa were aware of it, and they drew inspiration from it. So, the Harivansha must have been composed at least 1 or 2 centuries before Kalidasa. Now, there are certain passages in the Harivansha which are also found in the works of Ashwaghosha, like the Buddha Charita. So, Ashwaghosha's date is around the Kushana period, and André Couture, a very well-known French scholar of Indology, who has done very commendable work on the Harivansha, dates the Harivansha between the 1st and the 3rd centuries of the Common Era. Now, what is the date given by the editor of the critical edition? So, according to Vaidya, the Harivansha as a text with the Adhyayas 1 to 98 of the critical edition was in existence in 300 CE, and the rest of the chapters were added sometime between the 4th century CE and the 11th century CE. Now, coming to the archaeological evidences, we have the depiction of Keshivadha on a weight from Mathura, which you can see on screen. This is dated sometime between the 2nd or the 3rd century CE. And this particular depiction of Keshivadha, Keshi was a wild horse which was killed by Krishna. In fact, that is like the last Vraja Leela of Lord Krishna. And what you see on this weight is exactly matching with the descriptions in the Harivansha. Now, unfortunately, certain scholars feel that this is not Keshivadha, but this is definitely Keshivadha, as it is very much in concurrence with the description in the Harivansha. So, we have this young person here who has inserted one hand in the mouth of this wild horse. It's quite a stout horse, and with one leg he is kicking the chest of the horse. So this is definitely Keshivada, and I have confirmed this with other well-known scholars of art history. Now the Harivansha was aware about urban centers. It was fully aware about what urbanism is and the difference between urban and non-urban settlements. Also, there is a statement in the Harivansha that the city of Mathura was spread on the banks of the river Yamuna in a crescent shape, and this has been endorsed by the excavations in the city. Now, the excavations which were done quite a few years back have revealed 5 habitation periods. So, in the second period, period 2, we witnessed the beginning of urbanization in Mathura, and this corresponds to somewhere between the 4th century BCE and the 2nd century BCE, and the rural settlement of the previous period now transformed into a large settlement with a colossal mud fortification wall which formed a longish crescent to the west of the Yamuna. So this is extremely important. This is what the excavators have documented. Also, the text speaks about a fortification wall, and remains of the fortification wall of Mathura have been discovered. Now, of course, with rapid urbanization in the city, it can be hardly traced, but yes, a couple of decades ago, some parts of the fortification were visible. Now, this fortification wall probably had a moat on 3 sides, and the moat also has been mentioned in the Harivansha. And this fortification wall had an affiliation or an affinity to the fortification wall at Shravasti. Shravasti was a capital of the kingdom of Kosala. Now, it was during this time that Mathura changed from a tiny village to an extremely prosperous urban center, complete with a fortification. And also, we find that the number of settlements in the Kushana period was much higher than the number of habitation sites in the Mauryan period in Mathura. Now, coming to the 4th period, this was a period of cosmopolitanism in Mathura. This was when Mathura was flourishing, swarming with various people belonging to heterogeneous communities. And this period is dated from the end of the 1st century CE to the 3rd century CE. So, in this period, the fortification wall was greatly enlarged, and we have the depiction of public architecture in the sculptural panels from the Mathura school of art dating to the Kushana period. So, the rule of the Kushanas is dated between the 1st century CE and the 3rd century CE, the principal Kushana rulers. And one thing that is extremely interesting is that certain Kushana rulers, the later ones, some of them were known by the name Vasudeva. And one of those kings had the depiction of Vasudeva, that is Krishna, on his coins, holding all the ayudhas associated with him. Now, another evidence. N.P. Joshi, Dr. N.P. Joshi was a very well-known art historian, and he was also the director of the government museum at Mathura. So, he has written an article about how certain passages in the Harivansha can be dated to the Kushana period. So, in the Harivansha, we have the Pradurbhavas or the appearances of Vishnu. So, we are told that Vishnu appeared in the form of a lion first and then divided himself into 2. So, this is obviously an allusion to the Narasimha Avatara. And there is a Satavahana period plaque from Kondamattu in Andhra, which has the depiction of Narasimha as a lion with 2 hands holding the Gada and Chakra. So, he is in the process of dividing himself, and the Narasimha here has been shown with the Panchavrishni Veeras. We'll come to the Panchavrishni Veeras a little later. So this is dated to around the 2nd or the 3rd century CE. So this is another indication of the Harivamsha being composed in the Kushana Satavahan period. Then, as we all know, Balarama, the elder brother of Krishna, plays a very important role in the narrative of Krishna's life, and it is also well known that he was an incarnation of Ananta Shesha. He wore blue garments, he wore only one kundala, carried the hala and the musala, and loved to drink intoxicating drinks. Now, there are 27 icons of Balarama dated to the pre-Kushana and Kushana periods, and the textual descriptions of Balarama in the Harivamsha match very well with these icons, and there is a less similarity of the textual descriptions with the post-Kushana images of Balarama. Now, the next point. Vishnu Krishna is spoken of as Shankha Chakra Gadadhara, the bearer of the conch, discus and mace in the Harivamsha. And the Kushana period icons of Vishnu Krishna match exactly with this description. So here are two icons of Balarama. So here, this particular icon was found at the village of Janasuti, which is near Mathura, and now it is housed in the State Museum, Lucknow. So here he is carrying the hala and the musala, and there is a snake hood over his head, indicating him as being an incarnation of Shesha. So this icon is dated to the 2nd century BCE, so to the pre-Kushana period. And this is another icon of Balarama dated to the Kushana period, where he is shown with a snake hood and he is carrying a flask from which he is drinking some intoxicating drinks, and he wears a beautiful Vanamala. So these descriptions are very much in concurrence with the text of the Harivamsha. This is an image of Lord Vishnu Krishna from Mathura, and here he is holding the Gada, Chakra and Shankha. And this is a very thick Vanamala that he is wearing. So we are told in the Harivamsha that Krishna would always wear a garland of forest flowers and forest leaves. And Krishna is also known as Vanamalin. So though here the Vanamala is not very long, he is wearing a Vanamala. From the epigraphical point of view, epigraphy is the study of inscriptions. The Kho copper plate of Maharaja Sarvanatha is dated to the mid 6th century CE. The exact date is 533-534 CE. Now this was issued from the hill or city of Uchchakalpa, and it records the donation of 2 villages for the temple of Pishtapurika Devi in the town of Manapuram. And there is a quotation from the Mahabharata which has referred to it as the Shata Sahasri Samhita, composed by Vyasa, the son of Parashara. And the quotation from the text highlights the importance of land grants. So obviously when you talk about a Shata Sahasri Samhita, it indicates the inclusion of the Harivamsha. So one thing that we can say is that by the Gupta period, by the 4th century CE, the Harivamsha had become a well-known, well-established text. Now we come to the contents of the Harivamsha. Let us first see about the Harivamsha Parva. Now the Harivamsha Parva commences with the description of the cosmological process which involves themes like the Adi Sarga, that is the first creation, Daksha Srishti, which is Daksha's creation, Marud Utpattihi, that is the creation of various kinds of beings, Prithu the narrative of King Prithu, and Manvantarani, the periods of the various Manus. Now, I would like to discuss the Akhyana, or rather the Upakhyana of Prithu in some detail. This Upakhyana goes right back to the period of the Rigveda, and it developed over the centuries. You also have a reference to the Prithu Upakhyana in the Mahabharata, but the Mahabharata narrative is quite concise. Now, the Hari Vansha has assigned a detailed treatment to Prithu and his milking the earth. Now, as per this text, a king called Vena was born in the lineage of Anga, who was born in the lineage of Atri. Now, Vena was not at all dutiful, and he behaved the way he liked, very arbitrarily with his people. Now, under Vena, we are told by the Hari Vansha that the subjects gave up the study of the Vedas and making the call of Vashat. Now, Vena, because of his arrogance, was killed by the rishis, and Prithu emerged from his right hand. Now, Brahma, the gods, and the Angi Rasas, all movable and immovable beings, crowned Prithu as the king of the people. Due to the affection, ranj of the people which towards Prithu, he was given the title of Raja. So, the text is also giving you the etymology of the term Raja. And the subjects appealed to Prithu to provide them with livelihood. Now, what did Prithu do? Prithu is said to have lifted his Ajagava bow and arrows to kill the earth and feed his people. Now, the earth feared Prithu, and she assumed the form of a cow and began to run, with Prithu following her. Now, the earth requested Prithu to spare her and reminded him that she is the support of the entire world, and in her absence, his subjects would be destroyed, and that she will be covered with food. That is what she promises to Prithu, that she will be covered with food. Now, Prithu instructed the earth in the form of a cow to become his milk-making daughter, Duhitru, so that he could milk grains from her. Now, obviously, if you have to milk the cow, you need a calf, a vatsa. So she requested Prithu to arrange for a calf whom she could lactate. She also pleaded with the king to level her up so that her milk could spread, could flow without any obstacles and nourish the world. Now, Vaishampayana tells Janamejaya that Prithu lifted rocks with the tip of his bow and placed them on mountains. In the previous creation, the surface of the earth was not leveled, and there was no distinction between towns and villages. Now, there was a total absence of cow herding, grains, ploughing, and trade routes. Now, here we have the three principal sources of varta or livelihood, that is agriculture, animal husbandry, and trade. And these three have been spoken about by Kautilya in the Arthashastra, and of course many other texts. Now, all these things began to develop during the reign of King Prithu. And we are told that before King Prithu, that is before agriculture and all started, the people collected fruits and roots, but it was a tough act. Now, this is a very important statement. If we see from the archaeological point of view, of course, we have the origin of agriculture in the Neolithic period, but before that, people were in the hunter-gatherer stage where they would hunt animals and eat. naturally available fruits, roots. They did not know how to grow their own food. This is a very important statement which the text is making, and it shows the awareness of the text as far as human history is concerned. Now, coming back to the narrative, Prithu made Swayambhuva Manu as the calf, as the Vatsa, and milked different types of grains from the earth. Vaishampayana further tells that the people have survived till this present times on these very grains. Now, after Prithu had milked the cow, that was the earth began to live with towns and villages. So here also, there is a distinction among settlements. So there were urban settlements and there were the rural settlements. And she was giving grains as a tribute to the king. So we have a reference to taxation here. And as per her request, Prithu levelled her, and the text tells us that once Prithu accomplished this task, towns and villages emerged, and so did grains, cattle herding, ploughing, and trade routes. The people began to resort to these three sources of livelihood. Therefore, Prithu has been called the primordial giver of livelihood, Sanatana Vrittidaha. And it is suggested that apart from the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas too should venerate Prithu, because it was he who provided livelihood to them. Then moving ahead, we have the narrative about the Surya Vansha. So we are told that Surya was known as Vivasvat Martanda, and the text also gives details about the wives of Surya and his progeny. Saudnya was the first wife of Surya, and she was the daughter of Twastru. They had 3 children, Manu Vaivasvata, and the twins Yama and Yami, Yamadharma and Yami. And who is Yami? The river Yamuna. Now, both the sons of Surya and Saudnya have been termed as Prajapatis. Now, Saudnya was unable to bear the brilliance of Surya, and therefore she created her replica, who began to stay in her residence as her, and Saudnya herself went to her father's place. Then the text proceeds to narrate the lineage of Manu Vaivasvata, who had 9 sons, including Ikshvaku and Nabhaga. Ikshvaku's lineage is very well known. Lord Rama was born in that lineage. And further, moving ahead, we have chapters on the Pitrukalpa, where there is a discussion about various kinds of Pitrus in the form of a dialogue between Bhishma and Yudhishthira, and this dialogue underscores, highlights the importance of Shraddha. Then we also have the Soma Vansha, where the lineage descending from the moon has been described, and obviously the discussion of Soma Vansha is very important because Krishna was born in the Chandra Vansha, the Soma Vansha. So we are told about the birth of the moon, that is Somotpattihi, and Soma's father was Atri Rishi. Then the text also alludes to the narrative of King Pururava, who was the son of Buddha, and Pururava's consort or Urvashi. Then Nahusha, a certain king, was the son of Ayuhu. Ayuhu was the son of Pururava and Urvashi. And Nahusha had 6 sons: Yati, Yayati, Samyati, Ayati, Yati, and Uddhava. Now Yayati had 2 wives. Devayani, who was the daughter of Shukracharya, so she gave birth to Yadu and Turvasu, and the second was Sharmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, and she gave birth to Dhruyu, Anu, and Puru. And Lord Shri Krishna was born in the lineage of Yadu. Now, going ahead, we have the episode of the well-known Shyamantaka jewel. Then we have a discussion on the various pradurbhavas or manifestations of Lord Vishnu. In the Varaha pradurbhava, each part of Varaha's body is compared to various elements of a yajna. Then, of course, as we discussed earlier, we have the Narasimha pradurbhava, the Vamana pradurbhava, and also the Dattatreya pradurbhava, the Jamadagnya Rama pradurbhava, Dasharathi Rama pradurbhava, and there is a brief discussion about Ramarajya also. And we also have the story of Lord Rama in the Mahabharata, which is known as the Ramopakhyana. It's a very highly discussed akhyana, or upakhyana rather. And we also are told that the pradurbhava of Keshava, that is Krishna, has been narrated in the Mathura Kalpa of the text for the well-being of the worlds. And we are told that Keshava slay Shalva, Kamsa, Mainda, Dvivida, Arishta, Keshin, Putana, the elephant Kuvalayapida, Chanura, and Mushtika, as well as other Daityas in human form. Also, he killed Naraka Yavana, that is Kala Yavana, and Krishna cut off the 1,000 arms of Bana, that is Banasura. And finally, we have the Pradurbhava of Kalki Vishnu Yasha. Then we have the description of the Tarakamaya war between the Devas and Danavas. Kalanemi was a very powerful demon who was killed by Vishnu. Then we have the description of Brahmaloka Varnanam, where Narayana, Lord Vishnu Narayana, goes to the loka of Brahma, and the whole loka of Brahma was filled with rishis engaged in the performance of various yajnas. There is a reference to Vishnu's cosmic sleep in his abode known as Narayana Ashrama, and Vishnu sleeps when the summer season ends and wakes up when the clouds vanish. Then, as we go closer towards the Vishnu Parva and the advent of Lord Krishna, we have this narrative where Vishnu wakes up from his sleep to listen to the predicament of the earth. Now, the earth has become overburdened, and she, along with Brahma and the gods, comes to Vishnu, and Brahma tells Vishnu that the earth is overburdened with kings, their armies, and subjects. And she is completely tired, she is completely worn out, and Vishnu must do something to give her relief. And the earth appeals to Vishnu, the bearer of the chakra, to reduce her burden. And then, of course, Vishnu promises the earth that he will soon appear on earth. And then there is also reference to various devas taking birth on earth as various characters in the Bharata family. For example, the ocean was born as King Shantanu, the great ancestor of the Kauravas and Pandavas. Then Narada is reporting the details of Mathura, because Mathura was the place where Lord Krishna was to appear. And it was the prosperous and populous town located on the banks of the Yamuna. And we have the reference to the episode of Shatrughna killing Ravanasura in Madhubana and establishing the city of Mathura there. And this episode has been discussed in great detail in the Uttarakanda of the Valmiki Ramayana. Then Narada tells Vishnu that the city of Mathura is being ruled by Ugrasena, whose son Kamsa was none other than Kalaneni reborn. Brahma tells Vishnu that he will be born as the son of Vasudeva, who tended cows in the vicinity of Mount Govardhana, and his wife Devaki. Vasudeva has been referred to as the one who paid taxes to Kausa, and he was originally Rishi Kashyapa, who was cursed as he stole the cows of Varuna. Now we come to the Vishnu Parva. Now, this is a very noteworthy thing. In the Bhagavad, we have the Akashvani, which tells Kamsa that your cousin Devaki's eighth child will be your death. But there is no such Akashvani in the Harivansha. In the Harivansha, sage Narada visited Kamsa in the Upavana of Mathura. And we are told that Kamsa came out of his Pura, that is a fortified settlement, to greet Narada, and he duly honored him. Now, Narada is the one who tells Kamsa that he got to know in Brahmaloka that the eighth child of his cousin Devaki would be his death, and that he should do something about the child while he is still an infant. And after Narada's departure, Kamsa demeans him, and Kamsa doesn't take Narada seriously because he thinks he is all powerful. Then Kamsa is represented as thinking to himself that he has already instructed his followers, his associates like Keshi, Pralamba, Denuka, Arishta, Putana, and Kaliya to cause havoc on earth and kill anyone and everyone who would be a danger to him, including unborn children. And later, when Devaki and Vasudeva were living in Mathura, they were living in a house and not in jail. Kamsa told his agents, Kamsa told his attendants to secretly keep a watch on Vasudeva and Devaki in their home, but unknown to them. Then Vishnu decided to place himself in the eighth embryo of Devaki. He told Nidra to remove the seventh embryo of Devaki and place it in the womb of Rohini, the senior wife of Vasudeva. Now, the seventh child would be Vishnu's elder brother Sankarshana. He will be known so because he would be extracted from the womb of Devaki. Nidra would be born on the ninth day of the dark fortnight when the moon is in conjunction with the Abhijit Nakshatra to Yashoda, the wife of Nanda, and Nanda was the person who was taking care of Kamsa's cows. Now, both Vishnu and Nidra would be born to their respective mothers after the 8th month of confinement. The children would be exchanged. Kamsa will dash the baby girl against a stone and she will rise up in the sky. This baby girl will be worshipped as Devi Vindhyavasini, and she will be the sister of Indra and Vishnu, and she will be known as Kaushiki because of the Kushika Gotra. Now, Kaushiki is a very well-known name for goddess Durga, and the description of Devi is one of the earliest literary references to the Shakta Sampradaya. Then, of course, Lord Krishna was born, Nidra was born as the daughter of Yashoda, and Vasudeva exchanged the babies, and as Vishnu had said, Kamsa smashed the baby girl against a stone. She rose to the sky in a divine form as a divine goddess and told Kamsa that since he had dragged her, he too will be dragged in the same way on the time of his death, and she will open his body and drink his blood. Now, one thing is that there is no reference in the Harivansha to Vasudeva crossing the river. And when, after Vasudeva has exchanged the children, Vasudeva tells Nanda to go to Vraja with both his in the sense Vasudeva's sons, along with Yashoda. So the cowherd settlement where Nanda moved was situated on the banks of the Yamuna in a forest. Then here we have the well-known episodes like Shakata Bhanga, the killing of Putana, the uprooting of the two Arjuna trees, and the Arjuna trees were worshipped by the cowherds. So all these leelas which Krishna performed during his infancy have been told. Then what happened is that the cowherds were of course using a lot of fire, wood, and other resources of the forest, and soon the resources of the forest depleted, and Krishna, now who was a child of 7, wanted the cowherd settlement to move to the forest of Vrindavana. So he caused a few wolves to emerge from his body who caused havoc in the settlement. And then the settlement moved to Vrindavana, which was like the heavenly, the celestial Nandana forest. And it was for this, the migration had been for the well-being of the cowherds and cows. And the forest of Vrindavana had the Govardhana mountain and the Bhandi Rajid, which were the two landmarks of dotting this landscape. And the river Yamuna flowed in the middle part to the center of Vrindavan as if like the parting in the hair. Then we have the episode of Kaliya. Kaliya was the great serpent who was living the Hrida of the Yamuna. It was known as the Kaliya Hrida. And we are told that the river Yamuna was being polluted by this serpent. And the forest of Vrindavana was supposed to be guarded by the allies of Kaliya who lived in the forest. And then Krishna thinks to himself that he must suppress Kaliya, and after this, the river will be pure again, and she will be able to supply water to the Gopals and Gopis. Now, here again, we see that Krishna is not thinking for himself, he's thinking for the well being of the community. And he says that the cowherds will be able to avail her, and tirthas would become easy to approach. Now, this is the objective of Krishna's life as a Gopa, and which this was to correct the Mangoran beings who were treading on the wrong path. Very similar to what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vinashaya Chatuskrita. So, this is a sculpture, a Kuttabir sculpture from Mathura, where we see Krishna as a young boy on the hoods of Kaliya. This is one of the wives of Kaliya. Now, Krishna climbed up a Kadamba tree and jumped into the Yamuna to defeat Kaliya. And of course, Kaliya is vanquished by Krishna, and Krishna instructs Kaliya to leave the Yamuna and go to the ocean. And he says that Kaliya will not be in any danger from Garuda because the footprints of Krishna will be there on his coats. Then we have episodes like Sankarshana killing Dhyenuka, then the episode of Pralambasura, and that is how, after the death of Pralambasura, Sankarshana got the name Baladeva, the powerful lord. Then we have the famous Shakramakha. So we come to the episode of Shakramakha, the Govardhana episode, which is a very, very popular and very significant episode in the life of Lord Krishna. In the 59th Adhyaya of the Harivansha, we are told that a senior Gopa was describing to Krishna the necessity to perform Indra Yajna or Indra Yaga, or a rite in the honor of Indra Shakra. And it may have been a practice among cowherds. And the cowherd explains to young Krishna as to how Indra makes the clouds bring rain. And it is only under the command of his that the rain water causes the grains to grow. And the cowherds and the other people eat these grains, and their supply should remain unhindered. Now, according to the cowherds, it was Indra who brought rain, which led to the growth of crops and the refreshment of the whole earth. And this is a very important metaphor for the pastoral way of living. And we are told that Indra milks the cows of the sun, that is the sunbeams, and they yield fresh milk, that is the rainwater, which is stored in the clouds, and it is this milk which comes down on earth in the form of rain. It is for this reason that Suresha, that is Indra, was worshipped by a Utsava by the people. So, the aged cowherd explains to Krishna about this whole thing. And Krishna responds that we as cowherds are a community living in the forests, and we tend to cattle, which is our source of livelihood and wealth. And in his opinion, that is Krishna's view, cows, mountains, and forests are the deities of the cattle herders and not deities like Indra. Now, he says that the Varta of the agriculturalists is plowing, for traders, it is commerce, and the cow is from where the cowherds derive their source of livelihood. And these are the three forms of livelihood prescribed for the Vaishyas. And when these vocations are being followed, their respective mainstays become the supreme deities for their respective practitioners. And for the cowherds, their source of Varta was the cow. And Krishna says that mountains are the paramagati of the cowherds. And Krishna tells them that you must perform a sacrifice, a yaga, in honor of the mountain in the forest, that is Govardhana, and garner as much as milk as possible to offer it to the mountain. And Krishna comments that the Brahmanas, it is their main duty to sacrifice through Vedic formulae. The agriculturalists must offer a sacrifice to the furrow, and in the same way, the cowherds must perform a sacrifice to honor the mountain in the forest. So here the mountain is Govardhana and the forest is Vrindavana. Krishna also says that the cows have to be venerated and the sacrifice should be offered to the mountain. And he says that cows have to be worshipped always and that there should be no doubt in the minds of the cowherds. Now, coming to the actual sacrifice, we are told that great quantities of milk, yogurt, and ghee, along with the rice, were put together by the Ghosh or the cowherd settlement to offer it to the mountain. And Krishna, after all food was offered, assumed a huge, gigantic form and devoured all the offerings and proclaimed to the cowherds that because of his power, they were aware of thousands of cows. Then, of course, we have this whole episode of Indra getting angry and causing delusion. Vrindavana, Krishna lifting Govardhana to protect the whole Vraja. And Krishna held the mountain for 7 days. And Indra realized that he can cause no harm to people who are protected by Krishna and to Krishna himself. So he comes down on earth, mounted on the elephant. He sees Krishna sitting on the mountains, stone, and makes a long speech in his presence, wherein there is a allusion to Goloka, that is the world of cows, which can be attained by the cows alone. There's also reference to Goloka in the Mahabharata, and in later Krishnite religious traditions, this concept of Goloka becomes very significant. And the cows in Goloka, a mythic world filled with cattle, are represented as promising to the latter, that is Krishna, that they will be extremely happy to provide draught bulls. And this provision could imply that the Gopa community, that this was implied for the Gopa community who was living in the forests of the Mathura region. Then the cows are being protected by Krishna and they are the ones who safeguard the world. And the cows tell Krishna that they, along with the bulls, are increasing in number by giving birth to progeny. And Krishna, who was very powerful, was perceived by the cows as their guru and their very life giver. And they tell Krishna that he will be their king and he will attain the stature of the Indra of cows. Now, Indra communicates to Krishna that he will consecrate him with the sacred water stored in golden pots. And just like he is the Indra of the gods, Krishna would rule supreme as the Indra of cows. And the people on earth will glorify Krishna as Govinda, the Indra of the cows, and it is the cows who have established him as their lord. So this is an image of Mount Govardhana. This sculpture that you see is, of course, Krishna lifting Govardhana. You can see a cow and a calf here. This establishes the pastoral context of the whole narrative. And this particular sculpture was found in the vicinity of Mount Govardhana. This is dated to the Gupta period. And this is another very beautiful sculpture from Mathura, from the site of Gadashrama in Mathura, where Krishna is seen balancing the Govardhana mountain on his hand, and we see the cows and the cowbirds. So this is also contextualizing the whole episode. This particular sculpture is my personal favorite. Krishna performs the Halli Saka dance with the gopis on a moonlit night. This episode is known as the Halli Saka Kredanam. And after this, this episode can be considered to be like the origin of the Rasa Leela, which develops greatly in the Bhagavata Purana. And after this episode, we have the killing of the bull demon Arishtasura by Krishna. Then Kamsa, in the meantime, Mathura is getting very worried because Krishna is growing like a cloud in Vraja and discusses this with his kinsmen. And Kamsa says that he is all alone without ministers and his spies are blind. He probably means that his spies were not able to keep a proper watch on Krishna's activities and they did not report those activities to him. And Kamsa then dispatches Akrura to Vrindavana to bring Krishna and Baladeva to Mathura as he was organizing a Dhanurma. And in the meantime, Krishna kills the white horse Keshan who fled on human flesh, who was very dreaded in Vrindavana. And after this, Krishna owned the title Keshava. And the main deity of Mathura is known as Keshava Deva. So we have the Keshava Deva temple at Sri Krishna Janmasthana, which is also known as the Katara Keshava Deva. And this temple originally, in all probability, was built by Chandragupta II Vikramaditya because we have discovered a broken epigraph of his, and he was a great devotee of Lord Vishnu Krishna. He's called Parama Bhagavata on his silver coins. Akrura takes Krishna and Balarama to Mathura, and on the way he halts on the banks of the Yamuna to offer his veneration to the Lord of Snakes who lived in the water. He entered the water of the Yamuna and saw there Ananta, who was wearing blue garland and carried a hala. And Ananta had a tala dhwaja, and Krishna was seated in the lap of Ananta. Now Krishna and Baladev reach Mathura. Krishna breaks the ritual bow of Kamsa in the Ayudhagaram. He kills the washerman and dyer of Kamsa. The garland maker who gave garlands to Krishna and Balaram is blessed by Krishna. Then he meets Kubja, the lady who provided unguents to Kamsa, and he makes her beautiful again. Then we have the killing of Kuvalaya Pira by Krishna. Then we also have the description of the stadium or Ranga constructed by Kamsa for the wrestling duels. Now, during the wrestling match, Krishna killed Charmura and Mushtika was killed by Balarama. Then Kamsa was dragged from his throne by Krishna and killed. Now, after killing Kamsa, Krishna went to Devaki, his mother, and touched her feet, and she was extremely overjoyed to meet her son. See, she was meeting her son for the first time after his birth. And we are told in the Bhitari inscription of Emperor Samudragupta that he, after defeating his enemy, went to meet his mother, just like Krishna had gone to meet Devaki after defeating him or killing his enemy. Then Kamsa's last rites were performed on the bank of the Yamuna, and Ugrasena actually wanted to hand over the kingdom, his wealth and army to Krishna, but the latter refused, and Ugrasena was reinstated on the throne of Mathura. Here again we see that Krishna was not hungry for power. Whatever he did was for the betterment of the people, and he recognized the right of Ugrasena to be the ruler. Then we have the episode of Krishna and Balarama traveling to Ujjaini, to the hermitage of Sage Sandipani, who hailed from Kashi. And we are told that Sage Sandipani taught the Vedas, Vedangas, and Dhanurveda to the two brothers across a period of 64 days. And this information is very important from the perspective of Indic knowledge systems. Then Krishna also brought back to life Sandipani's son, who had disappeared during a pilgrimage and reunited him with his father. Now, the Avanti Kshetra Mahatmya of the Skanda Purana has taken reference to the text of the Hari Vansha while describing the site, which is believed to be the ashrama of Saint Sandipani. Then we have this whole Jarasandha episode where Jarasandha was the father-in-law of Kamsa, and to avenge the death of his son-in-law, he laid a siege to the city of Mathura, and of course he was defeated by Krishna and Balarama. And Krishna then advises the Yadus to migrate to Dwaraka. But he says that now Mathura has become very overpopulated. Then the new city of Dwarka was on the banks of the ocean, and in its vicinity was the Raivataka mountain. Meanwhile, Kala Yavana had attacked Mathura, and he had many foreign groups in his army, like Shakas, Tusharas, Pallavas, and his army had animals like elephants, horses, donkeys, and camels. And Krishna got Kala Yavana killed through King Muchkunda. He was burnt by King Muchkunda. Then Krishna summoned Vishwakarma to build the city of Dwaravati. And Krishna said that this has to be like the second Amaravati, which is the supreme celestial city. And Dwarka must be the best city on the earth. Krishna also ordered the ocean to give him space to build this new city, and the ocean did so. And Vishwakarma built a beautiful, opulent city of Dwaravati. And Krishna also summoned Shankha, an associate of Kuvera Vaishravana, and enjoined him to endow the citizens of Dwaravati with wealth. He did not want anybody to be devoid of wealth. Yet again, we see the selfless nature of Krishna here. Then we have the wedding of Krishna and Rukmini. So, Rukmini was the princess of Kaundinyapura or Kundinapura, and her brother Rukmi hated Krishna. And Jarasandha had asked Rukmini's father Bhishmaka for Rukmini's hand for Sunitha Shishupala of Chedi, and Shishupala was a cousin of Krishna. Shishupala was Krishna's aunt's son. And of course, then, Krishna and Rukmini had fallen in love with each other just by hearing about each other. And Krishna abducted Rukmini. A great battle followed, and of course, the armies of Jarasandha, Rukmini, and Shishupala were defeated. And then Krishna married Rukmini and Dwaravati. Then we have this episode of Danava Bhauma Naraka, who was the son of Prithvi and Varaha, and he had established himself in Pragya Jyotisha Murti Linga, and he caused trouble to the Devas, Rishis, and people. Now, Naraka had made the Danavas and Daityas bring all kinds of treasure for him, and he had also abducted 16,100 daughters of the Devas, Gandharvas, and Apsaras and kept them imprisoned in a fortress. He also stole the kundaras of Deva Mata Aditi, and Indra Vasava sought an audience with Krishna and requested him to kill Naraka, as it was only Krishna who could slay him. So Krishna mounted on Garuda with his wife Satyabhama and sojourned to Pragya Jyotisha. A great battle started between Janardana, Krishna, and the Danavas, and Krishna attacked the Danavas with ayudhas like the sword, chakra, and plow. And Krishna killed numerous demons, and finally he killed Naraka by cutting his body into two pieces by his chakra. Then Prithvi returned the kundalas of Aditi to Govinda. The earth calls Krishna as Govinda. Krishna then discovered the treasures accumulated by Naraka, and the demons who had survived the battle deposited them with Krishna. Krishna also discovered the women who were abducted by Naraka, and these women had been told by Vayu and Narada that Vishnu Narayana himself will be their husband. So Madhusudana, it is Krishna, made the demons transport these women to Dwarka. Then Krishna and Satyabhama reached Mount Meru, mounted on Garuda. The kundalas of Ajiti were returned to her, and she blessed her sons Indra and Krishna, and she also blessed Satyabhama. And Krishna happened to see the Parijata tree, which was venerated, and anyone who went near it could recall his former birth. So Krishna uprooted the Parijata tree and brought it with him to Dwarka. Then we have a reference to Ekanamsha, who is called a daughter of Devaki. She's in fact the same as Nidra, who was the sister of Krishna and Balarama, and there's a description of Krishna and Balarama, and with Ekanamsha between them standing in the assemblies of the Yadavas, and this is very similar to the the Vrishni trials which were being found at Mathura. And then Narada entered the assembly hall of the Yadavas and elucidated the episodes of Krishna's deeds, including his childhood feats. Then we have a description of Krishna's consorts, their progeny, and Krishna's direct lineage is given up to his great 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 grandson Sucharu. There is also a reference to Satyaki's grandson Lugandhara, and the text after this does not comment any further on the family of Krishna. That is, after Sucharu, what happened, it doesn't tell us. Then we have the episode of Pradyumna. Pradyumna was the eldest son of Krishna and Rukmini. So we have the episode of his abduction by Shambhara. Then, Pradyumna was raised by Mayavati, the wife of Shambhara, and then Mayavati fell in love with Pradyumna. Pradyumna killed Shambhara and returned to Dwaraka to his parents Krishna and Rukmini along with Mayavati. So Pradyumna is supposed to be Madana and Mayavati was his wife Rati. Then the next important episode, in fact, the concluding episode of Krishna's life in the Harivansha is the defeat of Banasura, who ruled the city of Shonitapura, and he had 1,000 arms and he was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. So Aniruddha, the grandson of Krishna, is supposed to have come in the dreams of Usha, Bana's daughter, and he overpowered her. Her friend Chitralekha brought Aniruddha from Dwaraka to Shonitapura, and Aniruddha, after a great battle, was imprisoned by Bana. Now, Krishna, along with the other Yadavas, traveled to Shonitapura, battled with Bana. Krishna cut off the 1,000 arms of Bana. And in fact, an interesting thing is that the well-known World Heritage Site of Elephanta near Mumbai was called Aniruddhapuri. And Aniruddhapuri was the capital of a dynasty known as the Traikutakas, who ruled there somewhere in the 5th or the 6th century CE. And the local belief is that, the caves at Elephanta were carved by Bana with his 1,000 arms. And, the Traikutakas were Vaishnavas. And the narrative of Krishna in the Harivansha concludes with the defeat of Bana. There is no reference to Krishna's death. Now, coming to the Bhavishya Parva, Shaunaka asked Loma Harshani about the descendants of Janamejaya, and their details were told by him. Now, Janamejaya met Vyasa and stated to him that the cause of the destruction of the Kurus was the Rajasuya Yagya performed by Yudhishthira, and Janamejaya further asked Vyasa as to why he did not prevent his forefathers from waging such a destructive war. So Vyasa replied that they never asked him, they never consulted him, and it was of no avail to foretell the future, as he could not have done anything to change it. Vyasa then tells Janmejaya that there was a possibility of his Ashwamedha Yajna being disrupted by Indra, and Vyasa describes the degeneration that will set in with the advent of the Kali Yuga. Then Indra had developed a lust for Vapushtama, the queen of Janamejaya, and had intercourse with her by entering the body of the white Ashwamedha horse, which was to be sacrificed by the king. Now, Janamejaya cursed Indra that he will not be honored with any yajna by the Kshatriyas. Janamejaya also banished the priests conducting the Ashwamedha rite, and he spoke disparagingly about his wife and wanted to drive her away as well. Then the king of the Gandharvas, Vishwavasu, gave a counsel to Janamejaya, where he said that women with character have to be always honored, and that women must be venerated as Shri, the goddess of fortune. And women, any woman for that matter, can never be corrupted. That is what we are told. Now, coming almost to the last part of the talk, we just take a few insights about Indic culture, ancient Indic culture from the Harivansha. So, first thing we talk about is the ancient Indic economy. So, we have a number of references to taxes being charged by various kings. So in the episode where the earth is appealing to Vishnu to save her, we are told that the earth was overpopulated by kings, and these kings, who were the lords of the people and the earth, collected 1/6 of the tax, Shadbhaga, and they secretly do not cause dissensions among each other. Now they behave very amicably with their subjects who are paying taxes, because the subjects must not reproach them because they are paying taxes, and they use their wealth for those who do not pay taxes, and they are also filling their treasury. Now, Kautilya has said in his Arthashastra that the Poshtagaradhyaksha should collect taxes through various sources, and the details of the taxes are given in the text. And of course, he talks about Shadbhaga, which was collected from the lands owned by individuals and not the states. On the other hand, the agricultural produce brought by the Sita Jaksha was from the state owned fields, which is known as Sita lands. Then Kausa is described as a terrifying king, and he's always demanding taxes. And one of the foundational principles of ancient Indian economy was that it should be that the taxation should be reasonable and equitable. And in fact, the Mahabharata compares the kingdom to a milk yielding cow. If one shows care to a milk cow, the caretaker will obtain milk. In the same way, a king who cares for his realm, it will bear fruit. And the ancient Indic taxation system, as we see from the Harivamsha, was consistently against the levying of suppressive taxes. Then, of course, Vasudeva has been described as the taxpayer of Kamsa, and he was engaged in the care of cows. Then, coming to Dana, Akrura has been described as Danapati, a great donor, and this Akrura has been instructed by Kausa to tell Nanda Gopa to bring the annual tax with him when he comes to Mathura with the other Gopas. And the tax was in kind. And what were the cowards paying Kamsa? They were giving him specialities which they had, their herds, then butter, ghee, milk, bulls, and male buffaloes. All these things had to be submitted to Kamsa. Then there is a discussion on Varta. Then we are told that at another place that the Brahmanas or Grastas have 3 vriddhis: officiating at rituals, teaching the Veda, and receiving gifts. Also, we have in detailed description of the pastoral economy. Now, Vasudeva was a coward. We have already discussed about him. And there is a speech, like after Kashyapa stole Varuna's cows, Varuna makes a speech to Brahma which highlights the greatness of cows and how the welfare of the cows leads to the good of the entire earth. And this speech actually underlines the importance of pastoralism or Pashupalana, which was among the 3 principal sources of Varta. And since Kashyapa's crime was related to cattle, he was born on earth as the cowherd Vasudeva. Then Dana and Dakshina are also given a lot of consideration in the Harivamsha. So we are told that the 4 birds who were born as Brahmanas in Kampilya tell their father that he must recite a particular verse before King Brahmadatta, and he will reward him with villages and delights. So here comes the element of land branch. Then Shwapalka was the son of Vrishni, and he was married to Gamdini, the daughter of the king of Kashi, and she was known so because she was always donating a cow, Gam, to the Brahmanas. Then Akrura has been, of course, described as Danapati, and he was the one who gave plenty of dakshina to the priests. Then, while talking about the Pradurbhava of Vishnu as Rama Dasharathi, the Harivamshakaras have stated that he performed 100 yajnas, and on the completion of which he gave munificent dakshinas. Then Brahma says that the earthly kings perform yajnas at the proper times and they give generous dakshinas at their conclusion. Now, the dakshina is the sacrificial fee which was given to the Ritvija for the services he has rendered towards the conduction of a yajna, and a yajna would only be considered to be complete after the yajamana honored the Ritvija with dakshina, and it was only after that that the purpose of the yajna was deemed to be fulfilled. Then the Manusmriti also talks about the kings performing great sacrifices with generous dakshinas, and kings were supposed to perform these and give generous dakshinas. And a very important reference here is to the Naneghat inscription of the Satavahana queen Naganika, where for the first time a detailed list of the Vaidika yajnas have been given and the dakshinas which were given at the end of the yajnas by the queen, that is Naganika, and her husband King Satakarni the first. And various kinds of dakshinas have been listed, including dakshinas in cash, the grant of villages, the donation of cows, horses, various things have been noted. Then dana is one of the main duties of a grihastha, and dana has been attached with great importance in texts like the Mahabharata as well as the Puranas. Then the text also speaks about various vocations. So we have a reference to Vishwakarma, who is being spoken of as the maker of 1,000 works of art. He is the carpenter among the 30 gods, the one who makes ornaments, the great artisan, the one who made aerial chariots for the deities, and he is the one who handicrafts the human beings and on whose handicrafts the human beings sustain. Then professional groups like the Nishadas and Dioras have been mentioned. Then various professionals like washermen and the Dial of Kaunsa, Kubja, the flower garland maker, all these have been described as residents of Mathura and they belonged to the non-food producing income groups. Now, garland makers are an important profession even today, and they have been mentioned in inscriptions belonging to the Kushana Satamana period, and garlands are frequently depicted in the Shaka Kushana art of Mathura. Then Gandikas, Malakaras, and jewelers were organized into guilds, as seen from the Jatakas. And Kautilya also refers to a settlement of unguent sellers and flower traders in the Nagara. Then Gandikas, Savarmikas, that is goldsmiths, ironmongers, cotton dealers, Pravarikas, tailors, that is dyers and floor makers have been mentioned in inscriptions from Mathura. Then the monk Upagupta's father Gupta, as per the Divyavadana, was a perfumer, a Gandhika in the city of Mathura, and Upagupta also helped him in his business. Then there are references to guilds and merchants. So, when Kaunsa arranged the wrestling duels, we have mantras with the Shrenis and Ganas who resembled mountains. Then they carried their banners which bore the symbols of every trade. Various members of different classes which comprised Mathura's inhabitants were the Shrenis, Ganas, and Ganikas, who were seated in the Ranga to witness the wrestling duel hosted by Kausa. Then, there's a reference to Shrenis being comforted after the death of Kausa. This underlines their importance in the state, or in the working of the state. And then, and Krishna and Balaram returned from Avanti, they were welcomed in Mathura by the Shrenis, the subjects, the ministers, and the Purohitas. Then, according to Kautilya, the settlement of the Shrenis was to be near the fortification wall in an uninhabited area. And, where there's a reference, indirect reference to trade, where we are told that the garments of Kamsa were sourced from various regions. Now, this may be an indication of the cloth trade which Mathura may have had with other regions. And the city of Dwaravati, which was created by Vishwakarma, was also ornamented with merchants. Then, as far as insights about Indic society are concerned, we have references to various foreign groups like Shakas, Bhairavas, Kambojas, Tusharas, Daradas, and Yavanas. And they were given the status of Kshatriyas. And we have mention of Kshatriya families like the Cholas and Keralas. We are also told that King Sabara is said to have suspended the religious rights of these people. Then there is a reference to the four Varanas. Lord Brahma is supposed to have told Bali that he had the support of the four Varanas. Then Kshatriyas are said to descend from Bali. The Nishadas and Divaras are said to have originated from Vena. Then, as far as position of women was concerned, we have marriages between various Janapadas like Shurasena and Avanti, Shurasena and Ashmaka. And we have a case of Yayati and Devayani, which was a case of a Pratiloma marriage. Then Shantanu and Ganga are supposed to have had a Prajapatya marriage. Then 8 forms of marriage have been noted in the Manusmriti. Then there is a reference to Krishna taking Rukmini's hand in marriage in the prescribed way. There is a reference to Swayamvara of Rukmini's daughter, and polygamy was very common. So, Vasudeva, Kamsa, Krishna, they had many wives. Then we have a reference to Ganika. The Ganikas have been mentioned even in the inscriptions from Mathura. And according to the Divyavadana, the city of Mathura had a very beautiful Ganika living called Vasavadatta, who fell in love with Upagupta. Then the earth tells Prithu that women and female animals must never be killed. Many women have been referred to as the teachers of Veda. A lady called Ila has been mentioned as Brahmavagini, and Shukadeva's wife and daughter are said to be adept in yoga. Now, there is also reference to the 4 ashramas and allusion to samskaras like Vivaha, Jata Karma, and Antyeshti. Now, we also get a lot of insights on ancient Indic polity from the Harivansha. So, we have allusions to the Saptangas of the Rajya, that is Swami, Amatya, Janapada, Durga, Kosha, Bala, and Mitra. So, we have the origin of kingship. So, Prithu is the primeval emperor. Then, Kshatriya kings are considered to be the husbands of the earth. The institution of monarchy was fully developed, as we can glean from the Harivansha. There are copious references to kings. Then various kingdoms and subjects have been mentioned, like people of Mathura, Dwarka. Then there are references to Amatyas of Kalia and Bana. Then Kamsa says that he is without ministers and his spies are blind. And Krishna advises Ugrasena to appoint spies within and outside the kingdom of Dwaraka. Now, great importance is attached to spies, Gura Purushas by Kautilya. Ashoka also had Prativedakas who would report to him all the matters in the kingdom. Then there is a reference to Ugrasena, the reference made by Ugrasena to ministers of war and peace who were bowing to Krishna after the death of Kamsa. Then such ministers have been mentioned in inscriptions also. Then, of course, as far as the Durga is concerned, we have the reference to Mathura being a fortified city. Then, in the case of Kosha, we have the treasury of Ugrasena, the treasure accumulated by Naraka. Then, Bala, as far as the army is concerned, Bala is concerned, we have the army of Jarasandha, the armies of the Vrishnis, army of Kalayavana. So, we have the description of the Chaturanga Bala. Now, we are also told that kings would send their armies to other kingdoms with the onset of the Sharada Rutu. And in the case of Mitra, there is a reference to the vassals of Kaliya and Jarasandha. Then we have the concept of devotion or bhakti to the king. So we have a reference to the loyalty of the Samvartaka clouds to Indra. Then Mount Govardhana and the clouds appeared like a land which was being destroyed by kings and their armies, and the clouds surrounding Govardhana resembled a capital being surrounded by the territory of the king with its subjects. Then kings sent their respective representatives to Krishna to establish cordial relations with him. And kings of the Cholas, Pandyas, and Shakas traveled to Dwaraka to meet Krishna. This is very similar, to the policies of Samudragupta. And ignoble kings like Kamsa have been severely condemned in the text. Now, coming to almost the conclusion of this talk, a few things which I would like to discuss very briefly. Many scholars like R.J. Bhandarkar and R.N. Dandekar, as well as even Western scholars, have claimed that there was 3 Krishnas. One was Gopala Krishna, the other one was Krishna at Mathura, and the third was Krishna at Dwarka. Now, the Hari Vangsha does not provide any basis for such a dissection of Krishna's personality. The episode when Narada enumerates the deeds of Krishna endorses the unity of the personality of Krishna. Then, in the narratives of the Hari Vangsha, after the move to Dwarka, Krishna is addressed as Govinda and Keshi Nishudana. Even the Bhagavad Gita, the first shloka of the 18th adhyaya of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna refers to Krishna as Mahavaho and Keshi Nishudana. And in the Mahabharata, there is a reference to cows from the Mathura region being gifted during the marriage of Subhadra and Arjuna. Also, we have the worship of the Pancha Vrishni Veeras at Mathura. And we have epigraphical evidence for this. So, who are the Pancha Vrishni Veeras? Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, Samba, and Aniruddha. So, we have Vasudeva, that is Krishna, Sankarshana, that is Balarama, Pradyumna and Samba were the 2 sons of Krishna, and Aniruddha was Pradyumna's son, and of course, Krishna's grandson. In the concept of Chaturvyuhas of Vishnu, in the Pancharatra school, we have Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha, and the earliest Chaturvyuha Murti is from Mathura. It is not from Dwarka. Similarly, one of the earliest known images of Sankarshana Balarama, as we've already discussed, are from Mathura. So this is an image of one of the Vrishni Veeras, which was found at the village of Mora, where an inscription referring to the construction of a Shaila Deva Gruha by a lady was discovered, and this refers to the establishment of the Pratimas of the Pancha Vrishni Veeras. And this is the Chaturvyuha Murti of Vasudeva Krishna. So the largest image is that of Vasudeva Krishna. This is Sankarshana with the snakehood, and this is Aniruddha with the sword. Here, like the image of Pradyumna is broken. This is an image of Vasudeva Krishna holding the Gada and the Shankha. Then, as far as the landscape of Mathura is concerned, many scholars call it as an imagined landscape. Now, this region has been inhabited since the Paleolithic times. Stone tools have been found in the vicinity of Mount Govardhana, and sites like Madhuvana, Mahavana, Vrindavana, Govardhan, and Mathura, which have been mentioned in the Mahabharata, which have been mentioned in the Hari Vangsha, have numerous archaeological mounds. So they were habitation sites. And many of the tirthas on the banks of the Mathura, banks of the Yamuna, are important archaeological sites. Then numerous other archaeological sites have been discovered near Mathura, like Mat, Sonk, and Gosna. Mathura was one of the largest painted graveware sites. In the Shunga period, there was a Bhagavata shrine at the Dwadashaditya Mound, and in the early 1st century CE, we have a temple dedicated to Krishna known as the Vasudeva Mahasthan. And many of the lokas mentioned in the Hari Vangsha developed as great centers of pilgrimage, which are visited by people during the Braja Yatra. So the origin of many sites in Braja Yatra go back to the Harivansha. So now, to conclude, the Vishnu and Bhagavata Puranas follow the narrative framework of the Harivansha, but they add their own details. The Vayu and Brahma Puranas have certain passages from the Harivansha. The Jaina Harivansha was composed in 783 CE by Acharya Jinasena, and of course, he has made a lot of changes. The Harivansha, this is very significant. The Harivansha was used as a pramana by Adi Shankaracharya in his Bhashya on the Vishnu Sahasranama. Similarly, Santa Jnaneshwar from Maharashtra has mentioned the Harivansha in his Haripatha, and Santa Ekanath from Maharashtra has stated in the Rukmini Swayamvara that his narration of the Rukmini Swayamvara is in accordance with the Harivansha and Bhagavata Purana. Similarly, I recently heard that Sri Shankaradeva, the great saint philosopher from Assam, was also influenced by the Harivansha. So the Harivansha is an extremely important Indic text, and it encapsulates the ethos of the ancient Indic civilization. Thank you so much. Namaste.